So when we talk about core work, right, we're traditionally talking about moving in this movement or this plane of flexion and extension, right? So these 2 points coming together would be flexion of my trunk or my spine. These 2 points getting further away would be extension of my spine or my trunk. Turns out, right, the body actually moves in 3 planes of motion. First being sagittal plane, right? The second being the frontal plane or coronal plane, which moves side to side, right? And also the transverse plane, which is rotation, right? Turns out that life is also always happening in rotation, right? Things are never actually just happening in one plane of motion, but for another time. What I want to talk about today is the frontal plane. And more importantly, what's happening between this point and this point, okay? So we know sagittal plane, flexion, extension. Frontal plane, we're gonna think about side bending, right? So getting short to one side and long on the other. Turns out, when I'm doing things like side planks and other frontal plane core activities, there are a few things that we can think about that help us, again, get the most out of our training. One of the things I hate to see is like a well-intended program or well-intended exercise that is not executed appropriately. Therefore, we do not get the benefit of that exercise and that intended adaptation. So one of the things I want to talk about is that when we are doing things like side planks, and I know for myself, one of the variations I do enjoy programming is this forearm and knee plank where I'm lifting up, right? I'm lifting my hips and my rib cage off of the ground. I'm then pivoting, slightly facing my belly button towards the ground. And in this position, I'm thinking about getting as long as possible on my top part of my abdomen, right? And as short as possible on the bottom side of my abdomen, right? So again, from the side, you can think about, or from this view, you can think about, hey, I'm reaching extension, so I'm thinking about getting in a straight line from my knee through my hip, through my shoulder, small pivot, and I'm getting as long as possible on my top half of my body, and as short as possible on the bottom half of my body. And if you bring your awareness towards the distance between, your rib cage and your pelvis on the side, and your rib cage and your pelvis on the other side, you're gonna start to target your obliques a little bit, or that lateral chain of musculature. And again, traditionally, when we're thinking about even a unilateral episode of low back pain or hip pain, or we have discomfort or weakness on one side, being able to understand how to operate our body in this plane can be really beneficial. And there will be a lot of other transfer to some of your other exercises that you're going to see in the gym. So again, flexion, extension. Hey, 2 thumb rule. It works here. Guess what? 2 thumb rule also works in the frontal plane, especially when we're doing things like our core work, side planks, payloft rotations, and single arm farmer's carries.